and another one. It doesn't say the amount, but another one from the Bank of Kaukauna. They're bonds. They're not bills. They're like savings bonds.
Okay.
Or Liberty bonds. I don't know what they are. They're bonds.
Some sort of piece of paper with money value to it.
Yeah. Another year passes, and then the January 1st, 1937, actually, this is more than a year. This is, a year after some of this other stuff, but like this is almost 7 years later from the original robbery. The Appleton Post-Crescent has one sentence in the paper, no headline even. Loot from the Bank of Kaukauna robbery in 1930 was recovered in Denver, and the holdup was attributed to the Dillinger gang. Just completely random. They have this remark in the paper. Here's where I take issue with this. All right. A small piece of the money was found in Denver with this guy. That's true.
Okay.
The part I take issue with is this Dillinger thing. Because at first they're like, oh, this is Dillinger. Here, the Post-Crescent says the Dillinger gang. It doesn't say John Dillinger specifically. It says the gang. Maybe that's a little better. I don't know. We do know John Dillinger was in Wisconsin sometimes. He did rob a Racine bank. That happened.
Okay.
He had his infamous shootout at the Little Bohemia Lodge up in Manitowish Waters.
Okay.
So we know that he hung out in northern Wisconsin. Here's the problem. He was in jail during the Kaukauna bank robbery. I can tell you with 100% certainty, John Dillinger did not rob the Bank of Kaukauna.
But it could have been his gang.
Right. I say it's possible members of his gang were involved without him.
Mm-hmm.
Without specific suspects identified, it would be hard for me to confirm it or rule it out. Like, if you say, oh, it was John Dillinger, I could say, no, 100% it wasn't John Dillinger. But if you say it was this member of his gang, I mean, if you give me a name, I can tell you where he was. But if you just say the Dillinger gang, it's so vague because at different points in time, like different guys were in and out of this gang, depending on who was in jail at the time. Just saying like the Dillinger gang is like a catch-all. Like it doesn't tell you who did anything.
When maybe I missed this and you already said this, did the newspaper say where they're getting the concept that it could be Dillinger involved? Or are they just saying that because he was robbing banks at this point in time, he was the big name, so that was just the name they threw out there?
See, that's the second part is what I get out of it, because that's why I want to know what the actual quote is that the guy says when they find the bonds, because I don't know what the U.S. attorney, what the prosecutor is actually claiming that connects the Dillinger gang to these bonds. I would love to know.
Okay, so he just kind of basically said that these could possibly be Dillinger, have come from the Dillinger gang.
Right.
But
they
he
didn't
never
quote
explains.
Him.
Yeah, they
didn't quote him. So the paper says that these connected the stolen bonds to Dillinger. But what does that mean? What did the guy actually say? Did he say, "Oh, this looks like something that the Dillinger gang would do"? Was he just like a general statement?
Yeah.
And they took that and ran with it. I don't know, because there's nothing here. They don't have an eyewitness saying, "Yep, it looks like this guy in a mugshot." They don't have anything actually connecting it to any real person.
Mm-hmm.
The bank robbery was never solved. And I'm not saying it's not some member of the Dillinger gang or some members of the Dillinger gang. It's a possibility. To me, it reads like we've got all these bank robbery gangs active in the 30s, some of whom are local. There's the bank robbery gangs that were like based out of Fond du Lac.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same complaint I always make about the Capone stuff. Is that, oh, well, of course, the most famous bank robber is John Dillinger.
Yeah,
so we're gonna say, oh, unsolved bank robbery, Dillinger gang.
Yeah, it must have been Dillinger.
Yeah, and to me, unless you have like one piece of evidence, that's some speculation. What's any evidence here? The only evidence I have is that he was in jail. That would lead me to believe that it wasn't his guys. Again, it could have been some members of his. I don't know. Unless I saw some actual thing of why they would suspect them as opposed to anybody else, I feel like it was just a name they threw out.
What did Dillinger have? I don't know anything about John Dillinger, so
Sure.
this is probably a really stupid question. Did he somehow have ties to Denver? Because it does seem interesting that the money they did recover was all in Denver, right?
Yeah, I mean, not really.
Did I miss that? There was 2 instances where they recovered money in Denver from the...
Well, it was one instance that they recovered. They recovered $9,000, and at least, I don't know what the rest of it traced to, if it traced to anything, but at least 2 of them were traced back to Wisconsin bank robberies.
But what was the thing you were saying when 7 years later in the Post-Crescent had an article?
That was just, I don't know. It's like them throwing it out, being like, hey, remember there was a bank robbery, and it was probably.
So they were
it says it's attributed to the Dillinger gang. Uh-huh. Attributed by who?
So 7 years later, they wrote an article just referencing the money that had been recovered in
See that, but this is the thing. Like, this is why people still, some people, I mean, most people probably have never heard this story, but some people still in Kaukauna will be like, oh yeah, did you hear that John Dillinger was here and he robbed the bank? Because they don't know the story. Mm-hmm. They know that piece that is hung on where somebody threw out the name of John Dillinger. So now they're like, isn't that cool? We got that Dillinger connection here, that he was at the Bank of Kaukauna. Like, no, he personally was never there. That's a guarantee. But that's what makes it, like, people remember it, because the Dillinger name is still remembered.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, what his connection to Denver would be, I don't know. He was primarily like an Indiana guy. So he was in Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. I mean, Denver's a bit of a hike.
Yeah. And if there's no evidence to suggest that he was ever down in Denver, which we probably don't have enough research.
I am not an expert on John Dillinger, but I don't know what his link to Denver would be. That's really kind of outside of his territory.
I think it would be safe to say, and tell me what you think of this, that it probably was not one of the in-state groups. And
one of the... Okay, where are you going with that?
Well, the reason I say that is just because the fact that the only money ever recovered was down in Denver. It suggests that these bank robbers were traveling around and around and around.
So that leads you to believe it's a bigger, more mobile
gang. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's reasonable.
And I could be dead wrong. It could be that the guy that robbed the bank took a trip down to Denver and spent a bunch of money, and then they recovered the money, and they're like, and that was the only time he was ever down there.
It's possible. I mean, who knows? We don't have enough pieces to really get a good answer to this. But yeah, it's a fair point, that if the money ends up in Denver, that it's less likely it's a bunch of guys who never left Wisconsin.
Yes. So everybody out there that's listening to this, the next time you want to say John Dillinger robbed a bank in Kaukauna, remember, when he was supposedly robbing the bank, he was in prison.
Yeah, so, I don't know how often people want to say that, but if they've heard that story, I will tell you 100%. John Dillinger was not in Kaukauna.
John Dillinger himself. It could have been his gang.
Could have been his gang.
But definitely not him. So.
I mean, maybe we'll do a follow-up and I'll tell the Black Earth bank robbery, which is not Fox Cities remotely, because it does kind of connect. Maybe we'll talk about that one.
Where is Black Earth?
Nowhere near here. I believe, and someone will correct. You got the Google, but I think it's like southwest Wisconsin.
We'll leave our listeners with where Black Earth is.
Okay.
Black Earth, Wisconsin. Black Earth, Wisconsin is. I have no idea where we are. I know that there's a CBD shop near it.
That's not helpful.
I mean, you were pretty good.
Yeah.
You were pretty good, Gavin. Yeah, it's west of Madison, a little bit northwest. I mean,
okay, northwest. So like more like Baraboo.
The closest city that I see that I know the name of would be Mount Orab, but Mount Orab is not very close to it.
Okay,
so it's between Mount Orab and Prairie du Sac, or Sauk City.
Okay, sure. Okay,
it's in between almost right in the middle of the two.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe we'll go down and take that out and see what else John Dillinger could possibly have been involved in, but probably not. And was he in prison for this one too?
I don't remember offhand. Like I said, I already had pulled a lot of material on Wisconsin bank robbery, so I've got that started already.
Have you looked at?
We can do it.
Were these two robberies within months, years?